seen Leadership Chapel in a while. It's great to have you here. On the count of three, let's say aloha to Pastor Tracy and Shelley. 1, 2, 3, aloha. They'll be back, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. Not sure. Today's Tuesday. When do they get back? Thursday. All right. Hey, whoa, just got louder. There's some spirits in the sound system these days. Okay, a little bit different Leadership Chapel. It's the first of our year, and we want to share some things with you that most will just be reminders to you about who we are, how we go about things as a team, as a church. And as we talk through them, if there's a need to pause and for anyone to ask a question, that kind of thing, just slip up a hands and we'll figure that out. Here you go. And also, we're kind of, December's crazy, and there's a lot of fluid motion within our team, within our leadership team. And so some of the stuff, let me just say to the campus pastors, executive team, that kind of thing, some of the stuff is in it's ongoing discussion. If I say something that we have to come back and address or fix, so be it. But let's just move ahead for the sake of just getting someplace, if that's okay. And so don't mean to jump into things that we haven't fully figured out yet. But I just wanted to say that because this is all, so many times, even when we remind people of stuff that we once had down as key stuff for us from like 3 years ago, it feels like brand new stuff this year. Does that make sense? Because we've forgotten from 3 years ago. So this is just a kind of a health check, if you will, for the first part of the year. So we are a church that has a mission, and our mission is to make disciples. We've been visiting that or revisiting that statement, in particular this thought of we're disciples who make disciples. And just the cycle that is, and we think that maybe it's time for us to evolve our mission statement to not just one church exists to make disciples, but one church exists to be disciples who make disciples, and that's something that we as individuals and as a team of leaders and as congregation members, we all model. So that's the what and the why. Let me just be clear on that. There is no other what or why that we exist. That is central to the Great Commission. It's why Jesus came, and then he gave us as his disciples that mandate. There's nothing more important. So when you hear us talking about our culture, when you hear us talking about our togetherness, when you hear us talking about a lot of different things that make one church special and who it is, can I just say that those aren't the main things. The main thing is that we make disciples, and we're disciples who make disciples. Ultimately, it's to know him and make him known. Those kinds of statements are the most important things. So as people hear us from the pulpit, from wherever, I want them to hear that the loudest, that we're about Jesus. That our team is about Jesus, that I'm going to have to wrestle with this if this keeps going on and off. That's the thing that we've got to keep championing the loudest. Now, with that said, we have other statements that have, I think at times, felt like the what and the why. Those are better said to be the how we go about doing things. I hope I'm making sense. One thing that we talk about a lot is being better together. We talk a lot about our culture. We talk a lot about being open-handed. There's these different things that make up a little bit of who we are. But when I think of those things, they're more about how we go about doing things, how we are as a team, than they are the what and the why. The what and the why is very clear, and it's about Jesus, and it's about his great commission on our life. So as we talk about things, let's remember that the end goal is not unity. The end goal is not togetherness. The end goal is to be really fit for Jesus. And in order to be really fit for Jesus, we're unified. We are together. And we need to make sure we remember that. And I think at times I've allowed as a leader our organization to become more focused on the how being the goal than the what and the why. And it's time for to come back. And I think if we start with just this thought that we're better together, which is super important to how we are and who we are, I really want to remind us that better together is a value of the greater whole. So like one church as a whole, all of us included, the greater whole, and a value of the individual parts. Now, the individual parts, first and foremost, are you and you and you and you and you. So we're better together, and that's not just about us. That's about you too. And it's also about each department, each ministry, each campus. So you can't talk about better together and just focus on the whole. You have to talk about being better together, and it's about the whole, but it's also about the individual parts. And I think that what I really wanted to remind us, me and you, about on that front really comes back to that we do have an organizational vision. And that organizational vision, many of you have heard us say this many times, and it says this: we are responsible to build one church. Again, this vision is not the what and the why. It's not the Great Commission. It's not gospel. This vision is how we go about doing. It's one of our key ways that we're executing that Great Commission. And it says we are responsible to build one church by or through building ministries and departments and campuses, and by preferring or deferring to others, helping others to do the same. That's that organizational vision. And that's so important to who we are. We care just as much about, we care more about the whole growing and being healthy than each individual part. But that doesn't say that we don't care about each individual part. We do, because if each individual part isn't healthy, then the whole is not healthy. Does that make sense? It's basically a statement that we reconcile how we live this better together, how we stay together life out, as we put that statement up top. And I think it's because we can go further and faster together. And I've said this before, and I just want to read it because I've written it down better than I could just say it by memory. But it has been said more than virtually any other animal, horses have impacted the way humans have lived throughout most recorded history. Many of us have lived in the 20th and now 21st centuries. We have no direct connection to horses, so much that they can teach us. For example, if you study draft horses, this is the example I shared a few years ago at a business meeting, which are very large, muscular animals. They're bigger horses than a normal horse. If you study them throughout history, they have been known and used for pulling great loads and moving very heavy objects. A single draft horse can pull up to 8,000 pounds. That's roughly 4 cars, I think. A car is about 2,000 pounds a ton, maybe a little more. The strength involved in this is hard to imagine, to pull one horse pulling 8,000 pounds. So one might speculate what would happen if we hooked 2 draft horses to a load. If instantly you thought, well, if one draft horse can pull 8,000, then 2 draft horses can pull 16,000 because you just added 8 plus 8, then you would be wrong to assume that. 2 draft horses pulling together cannot pull twice as much as one. They can actually pull 3 times as much. 2 draft horses together that each pull 8,000 pounds alone can pull 24,000 pounds working together. These horses teach us a very clear lesson in teamwork, but they still have more to teach us. If 2 horses that are pulling together have trained with one another, have spent time with one another, have worked together before, then actually they can't just pull 3 times as much working together as they can by themselves. The 2 trained horses in tandem can actually pull 32,000 pounds, which is a load 4 times as heavy as either horse could pull by themselves. I know you've heard that before, but I want to keep taking us back to this thought that we can do more together than we can by ourselves. But here's the thing we got to reconcile. It takes at times longer to do something together and in a healthy way than it is if we can just go on our own. And my favorite African proverb is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
And I believe one of the greatest temptations and strategies that the enemy brings to the church, and certainly to the people of God, is to bring division. A house divided cannot stand. And so as we, at the core of who we are as a church, is we say, listen, we're going to be better together, and we're going to do this thing differently, and we're going to prefer one another, and we're going to be focused on everybody, not just me putting my head down and doing my thing and focusing on my department or my ministry or my campus. Nothing will thwart the flow and move of God as much as division. I've seen men and women of God turn choose very sinful ways of lifestyle, and God still bless their ministry. But it's so very rare when division comes to the house of God that we still see the same kind of blessing. And so as we talk about being better together, it is core to who we are as a church. And in 2020, it has to be one of the things that we hold tightly to, not just in practice, but in heart. If you're married, you get this. In practice, we're married, we're committed. But if my attitude isn't right about something, everything is funky. Like my kids sense it. There's just things that aren't aligned and healthy. And there's just a different thing when people are on the same page and unified. And so my encouragement to us, not just to theoretically say, we're better together, we do this thing as one. Like that all sounds good and looks pretty on paper, but the living it out is so difficult. And as an individual, I'll say this. Protect your heart against the thought that you should just do this on your own. It'd be better somewhere else. Now, there are times that the Lord will move us on. I wouldn't be here if God didn't move me on from my last assignment. So I'm not talking about not following the Lord's direction. But I am talking about the fact that the enemy's strategy so often is to say, see, that's not working. See, that you don't need them. See, what if you went XYZ? And when I say them, I don't mean them. I mean them. We need each other. And so I want to encourage you in this new year to make a fresh commitment to remaining together.
Yeah, and a big piece of that is realizing that someone else has something to contribute to you. No matter what level of leadership you're at, somebody else above you, to the left or right of you, or beneath you, has a contribution to make into your life, and has things that you can study and learn from. And I think that sometimes we think we've got it all figured out ourselves, and I'm constantly trying to remind myself I don't have it all figured out. I need you, you need me, and all that stuff. And it really, even in the discovery of what we sense that we are called to do, we have chosen to make that a together journey. There's few things more personal than what you feel called to do. For you personally as an individual, in your community, and we can easily make that, oh man, this team infringes on, and I just think what we have decided to do is to embrace the reality that together we also discover how we live out the call of God in our life as well. And one of the biggest ways that we remain together and keep our togetherness is this Tuesday morning thing. I appreciate all of you being here. I know for many of you it comes at a sacrifice of time. You could be doing many other things. You could probably get off earlier on a Tuesday, yet maybe you have to work later on a Tuesday because you show up here in the mornings. For you that are watching this, I know that it takes some time outside of your normal work hours to watch this, and I think this is an important thing. So I just want to validate what we do here on Tuesdays, because I think it's one of the bigger ways that we remain together. It's how we realize and remember all that's happening in worlds that aren't directly connected to ours, and areas that we're not directly responsible for. That's super important. It's how we continue to grow as friends, and I think we can do a better job with that, just making the moments before and after this meeting count as good as we can. But I also want to just remind everybody that when you're not here at this Tuesday morning meeting, it is your responsibility to listen to the audio, if it's the audio portion of this meeting, or the video, which is on right now. And on One Church HQ, under I think the description, there should be a link, if you ever get lost, for the videos. And I'm not sure there's one for the audio, but I think there's one for the video. So if some of you could help me achieve that. But that's just one place to kind of find the link if you lose it. But every week on Tuesdays, if you're not here, so that you're not, if you can on Tuesdays, do it on Tuesdays. If you can on Wednesday, do it on Wednesday. The longer you wait, the worse it is, okay? So just as soon as you can in the week, watch this podcast, listen to this podcast.
And I'll give you a great why. Rob Ketterling, a pastor in Minneapolis, sat with the campus pastors a couple years ago at Ministers Renewal, and I feel like he gave such a great picture to the why of being together. He used an illustration of being in the flow as a team, and he said, all the disciples were together at the crucifixion / seeing Christ on the cross, although they all ended up fleeing. But he said, everybody believed except for Peter. And Thomas, except for Thomas. I'm all, that's not right, except for Thomas. And because Thomas didn't believe, what did he require? Extra proof. Well, not until I see his hand, the nail in his hand. Not until I touch it myself.
He wasn't there the first time Jesus appeared.
Right, after resurrection.
Yeah, you said because he didn't believe, he required extra proof. But it's because he wasn't present, he didn't believe.
Thank you. Yep. That's what I meant to say. But regardless, you get what I'm trying to say. When one disciple was not in the flow, when one of the followers of Christ was not in the flow with the team, the great way to say it is they're just out of the flow. They weren't there. It caused more.
Yeah, what's really neat is we get this interesting moment in the gospel where Jesus, says, "Here, touch the holes in my hands," or whatever. Yes, got it? Okay. We get this really cool picture, but let's imagine that we're a staff meeting for a second. This is a really good one for all of you who sit in meetings with us a lot. Imagine that was a staff meeting. Everybody else had to stop and wait for however long it took Thomas to realize that was Jesus and touch Jesus' hands and feet. Everybody else who had already come to grips with that and was ready to do whatever was next and go climb a mountain, who were present the time before, had to wait on Thomas to get Thomas's world figured out. That is a great picture of what happens in staff meetings when we allow one of us to be on a different page, especially because we weren't present or we just don't remember or whatever. So just a great sign that you can pass over that simple leadership principle in the gospel. Thanks, Marcia. Okay, so we're going to move on from Better Together to just some reminders about our team culture values. We felt like this is the best way to really just say some things and remind some things. Maybe we could just go off and on, and then you can comment on what I've missed about the one and vice versa. You want to start?
Sure. Now this is, remember, there's a sticky statement that culture eats vision for lunch. So we can say our vision is to make disciples. That's why we exist. But the truth is, if we don't have the culture we're looking for, it doesn't matter what our mission is at the end of the day. And so these are things, when we say this is the culture of One Church, let me be real clear. This is the culture of you.
This is the team culture values.
Yes, and this is the culture that you, as a team member, are saying, this is who I'm going to be, and this is how I'm going to engage as part of the team. Okay, this is not something that Kyle and I or the board or the campus pastor or the executive team have said, this is who we're going to be, and then we're the ones responsible. We are responsible. Okay, first team culture value is this. We win together, we lose together. We talked about to get better together, and so we've really covered a lot of this, but the truth of the matter is there are times that I leave a Sunday or a season, and am I okay? Oh, thank you. And I feel like I had a loss or a difficult, Sunday morning, or it didn't work out, but then we gathered together and somebody else across the circle had a great Sunday, or they're doing great financially, or they saw so many people be baptized. That's my win. And so we win together, we lose together. And a second piece of, I want to get my notes back so I don't go off track here. A second piece of that is together, you and I want to encourage and remind us, part of this togetherness is how we engage with one another in pure accountability. So we talked about this, I think we've talked about it a lot throughout the year. But one of the things in 2020 that I want us to grow in, as we talk about I want us to get better about pure accountability. Listen, if you know I did not do my job, if I dropped the ball, if I said, I'm going to pick up the hub on Tuesday, whatever, and on Wednesday I haven't done it, please don't wait for my boss to come find me to say, you didn't do it. Come to me and say, hey, I noticed that isn't done yet. Do you need something? Like this, we talked about this happening. This makes a healthy team. If everybody sees there's an issue and nobody's talking about it, that's not good. So, peer accountability, let's grow better in it. One to another, this way, this way, this way.
And I know that sounds super awkward. There's a lot of really nice people who are like, that's the last thing in the world I'd ever want to say or do. And I think you got to figure out the nice way to say it. You know, you have to figure out, hey, I noticed this, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because when this gets done this way, it's super valuable to me, to us. It really helps me, and when I send volunteers over there to the hub, that it's nice and picked up, and we feel organized on Sundays. And if our volunteers feel that we're organized, then they are organized. You know, they only rise to the level of us, and you got to just figure out a way to make it about, at the end of the day, some of the higher level statements of, hey, unity, togetherness, and then ultimately the big picture of when we do this, it honors God, it inspires others to honor God. You know, there's just so many things you just point out that, and so don't let it be like, hey, I'm your mom or your dad coming to critique you. This is more about us being a team, and because I value us as a team, I feel like I wanted to bring this up. I don't know, figure out your way.
The how always matters, but secondarily, I actually think the hub is an easy example. I think the harder thing comes when you go, I've noticed your attitude hasn't been so great. Are you okay? I mean, a practical thing of like, you left your coffee on the table. Okay, you can pick up after somebody. But when you recognize like there's a character something, there's a struggle internally with somebody feels like they're off, out of alignment with the team, those are the places of accountability that are important, that we hold each other to because it's important for each other.
You know, another example. Hey, I've been noticing that about 2 out of every 3 leadership chapels you walk in late, and you can see Pastor Kyle and Marcia. They just, especially Kyle. He's very easily distracted or whatever, and he tries to just walk over. But I can see him. You can probably see him that like he notices. It's like it kind of throws him a little bit. He's got to move past that and besides everybody else is seeing that, and does that make sense that if I would just encourage you to be more on time, because it matters to a lot of people. It's a speed bump where we don't need a speed bump, you walking in late. That's another example of peer accountability. Okay, number 2, word and spirit. We live by the word and we're led by the spirit.
Number 3, go ahead. I don't have any comments. Do you have comments?
So, I do. We haven't practiced. Okay.
I see you have comments.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, give us a moment.
Yeah.
I just think that some of these are just but we want to be people who have a high priority on God's word and its input into our life, and then the Logos word of God, and then the Rhema word of God, the Spirit-breathed contribution. We're lived by the word and we're led by the Spirit. Their contribution, meaning God's, is infinitely more important to who we are and what we do than our own. We've been talking about this a lot, about if not God, then who. We spent a lot of time talking about that and the series of David inquiring of the Lord. I need to hear the voice of his Spirit, not my own voice. The daily discipline of their input. So, moving on.
That's good, babe. Okay, number 3. Language creates culture. What we say shapes who we are. There are times that we just pause in the middle and I say, hey, remember, we don't all have churches. We all have campuses. We're one church. So my church didn't do this unless we did this. My campus did this. So there are little nuances that matter because it creates the culture of either together or not together, of either, God honoring or self honoring. And so there are little things that for us as a team, somewhere else it might not mean anything, but for us it means something.
Everything we say adds or takes away from organizational culture. Yep. We intentionally use words to create our desired culture. We want people to hear us using certain words because that is what they're picking up on. And because of that, we write things down as much as possible. When I notice that we are not doing what we say we said we would do a certain way, I always go back to the fact that we probably didn't write it down and disseminate that well. Because it was said, people heard it with one ear but not with both. And they live it out with less than that. And so we are a church that continues to write things down. And oftentimes when you write something down that you've just said for so long, when you write it down, it feels like it's brand new. That's the nature of humanity. Whoa, they're serious now. And so we are continually in the process of writing down. For example, one of the biggest things that we are writing down right now is what is a champion, and what does that look like for the champion and for everybody else. And so that's something that we've talked about for a long time. We've got one statement in our lexicon that's kind of governed that, but it's not enough. We're writing it down. But as we've been writing it down, guess what? We walk through the words, and it's like, man, I mean, different people embrace that differently because, again, it's been up here in the clouds, and we're writing it down. It's going to get more specific. And so words and concepts, they create and protect the culture of organization, and more specifically our team. You want to take wins, babe? Did I throw you? I'll do it.
No, wins. We're always looking for something to celebrate. So we do this practically Tuesdays. I think most of us do this practically on Sundays. But the truth is, we become what we celebrate. And we want to celebrate each other, and we want to celebrate wins, big and small. It's a biblical principle. It honors God, and I think it builds other people. And so we want to be the team that never stops looking for all that God is doing. And let's pause. When we're headed some direction, let's be really intentional to pause along the way and say, God, you're good here. God, thanks for showing up here. Because we'll never arrive. Like, listen, some of us have these big things. I can't wait to plant the new campus. And the campus is here, and it's like, okay, well, that was great, but now we have to do this. And so let's be people that don't just keep running through opportunities to thank Jesus. So why do we share wins? One is for God. It gives God the glory. Two, it's for us. It keeps our heart in a posture of thankfulness, remembering what God has done. And it reminds us that he's still doing something fresh. And then three, it's for our team. When we have momentum, our organization starts functioning on all cylinders. And sometimes momentum it's not just what happens, it's our spirits in the process of what's happening. You know, if I feel good about something, I can endure something a little longer. When I feel bad about something, it feels a lot heavier. Successes are celebrated. Troubles seem temporary when we are celebrating wins. Our successes, or when we don't celebrate them, our successes we end up ignoring, and our troubles feel overwhelming. And so the question that you and I need to always be asking each other is, do I help in creating momentum for our team? Am I helping create momentum? And do I know how to celebrate other people's victories? I want to be the person that sees across the circle or across the room or across the church or across the campus and celebrates when somebody else does something awesome.
Yeah. And the next one is attitude. We're thermostats, not thermometers. A great illustration. A thermostat sets the temperature in a room. A thermometer tells the temperature. Any idiot can tell the temperature in a room. Oh, it's cold. It's hot in here. But it takes a person of awareness. It takes a leader. It takes somebody with the right attitude to go over and change the temperature in the room, to set the temperature. And so I want to encourage you guys to be thermostats, not thermometers. You either set the temperature or you tell the temperature. We need more of us in this team who set the temperature and don't just tell the temperature. Our truest self comes out, bad attitudes and all, when things are difficult or when we don't like what's going on. We become thermometers when we don't like what's happening or when we question what's happening. I love this idea that as a thermostat, I see myself being a crucial part of the solution. And I think we need more of that. I think we need to, when we don't like an idea on the table, let's dive in and try to make the idea better rather than just say, well, I want to do my own thing. Or I'm going to do it my way. And so, again, we vote with our feet. Let's vote inward, not walk outward. Somebody equated attitude to body odor. And most of the time, you don't know you got it.
But the person next to you does.
It's always less apparent to yourself, so think about that. 3 reasons people's attitude go bad on a team. Number 1, the perception that I am the only one who is ... blank, fill in the blank, or that I alone understand, experience, or have this problem. It's self-centered thinking when we don't feel like our preference is valued or chosen. Our attitude goes bad. Number two, when we feel busy or overwhelmed. And then lastly, the struggle of being a leader and having vision and opinion partner with being a team member and submitting to what benefits the whole or someone else, or what the overall leader deems best. Those are three quick areas where attitude can go haywire. And at the end of the day, humility is a big antidote to a bad attitude or to attitude health. Next.
It's great. Next one, you before me. We are a team with a culture of gratitude, generosity, and honor. I've talked about gratitude when I talked about we celebrate. We want to have a culture of wins. But remember, when we think about gratitude, this is about remembering what he's already done and not getting caught up in the next thing that needs to happen or the next big idea or, this is fine, but it's not good enough. We want to be grateful to the Lord and to each other. Number two, generous. Generosity in our team means we give to each other. This is not just generosity to God. This is generosity to one another. And we give when it's difficult to give. That's generosity. And then we honor. I like this thought that I want to fight to out-honor the next person. Everybody sees places that the person next to you across the room could be better. We're not blind, and we haven't checked our brain at the door. But to be the culture that out-honors one another, that recognizes what it is to honor the person next to you, your leader, your team member, that's the culture that we want to have. It's deferring and preferring somebody else. We want to defer to one another, and we want to prefer each other.
The next team culture value is boldness. It says, beyond risk takers, we are faith walkers. This comes naturally to some and less naturally to others. But the truth is, you wouldn't be in this room and you wouldn't be doing what God has spoken to you to do if there wasn't a degree of willingness to be bold and to take not just risk, but to walk in faith. And so I compliment that. I know that I'm talking to the choir on some degree, but I just want to remind us that every new season is going to require a new step of faith, a new degree of boldness. And some of it is just keeping going when you're ready to give up. That's a bold move. Embrace the adventure. We walk by faith, not by sight. We are motivated by what we do not see. Everything is an experiment around here. We say that a lot. That just allows us to take chances on things that may or may not work without tripping about it, without getting too worried that this is the thing that's going to end this thing. And the truth is, the more and more I do this thing, the more I realize God's hand on this organization, and more importantly, his capital C church, is not going to be thrown by one person's one decision. So failure is an option as long as we learn from it and move past it. And I hope that you may see your leader, and I'm a part of this. You may see me really caring or opinionated about some of the specifics or some of the details. But fight to not let a leader who likes it a certain way, fight that doesn't get your eyes off of this statement, that this is an organization that also doesn't just value excellence, but values that step that may end in a failure because we took it. Like, I can't tell you how often I hear of someone making a decision that I wouldn't have made, but it was because I was absent, and I think to myself, well, I appreciate that. I'm glad they did that. At least they tried. God bless them. Or whatever ends up being my thought in the moment. It's always either blessed or endearing, I assure you. And then sometimes we come back and we pick up some of the pieces, and that's the way things work. But that's fine. Let's not let a fear of failure, a fear of disappointing somebody cause us to be handcuffed or to be stuck. And on this, beyond risk takers, we're faith walkers, embrace the adventure. I just want to say that I believe this thing that we're doing in Alicante and what it means for some of us is a big place where we can step into adventure. And some of you, especially let me talk to you that are on the older side of the equation, and some of you that are on the younger side of the equation. I think that you need to pray about Alicante. Doesn't hurt to pray about it. And maybe in a short, midterm, or long-term kind of idea, you can contribute there. God's going to do something there, and we continue to pray about what that looks like and when that looks like. But I just want you to know, I'm going to be scheduling a meeting and inviting some of you younger folks to come and just hear, the idea, the story, all that stuff, and think about this. But I just want to put that on the radar because I think that is an outflow of the adventure spirit that God has called One Church to be.
That's good. Right in line with that, we are a team that is going to decide to fear not. John Bates came a couple years ago. I'm super excited for him to come back to our revival night. But he came a couple years ago. We had a prayer and prophetic night. And one of the words he spoke over our church was not to allow fear, boredom, or control to have any place. And then we really took that as a team. We went aside, what's the opposite of fear? Well, it's faith. And so we're faith walkers.
Well, actually, what he said is One Church will grow if fear, boredom, and control are not found here.
Yeah.
You're constantly killing those things. Yep. He said One Church will continue to grow.
So fear, opposite of fear is faith. Boredom, well, that's that adventure. That's that your faith meaning something, not going through the motions. And then control. That's being open-handed. That's not my way. It's the Lord's way. It's your way. It's not having to have it just like this. And so I want to encourage us to always remember we cannot operate out of fear, out of boredom, or out of control. God is in control. Nothing is going to happen to me, to my family, or to this church that he doesn't create or allow to have happen. And so all this comes back to my faith and belief in the Lord. All right.
I talk about number 8 a lot. I think it's number 8. Vision for the immediate, the intermediate, and the ultimate. And really, I want each of you to ask the question, what has God called me to do? What am I hired to do? What is my role? And then in the immediate, that's right in front of you, the intermediate that's out there, and the ultimate. Like, you need to have vision for each place. There's too many leaders that have vision for 1 or 2, but not all 3. And they aren't as healthy as they can be. So, like, what can I do right now with the people that I have, the money that I have, the money that I don't have, the people I don't have? What can I do right now? There's something. There's a small step that you can take. Stop complaining. Get to it. In the intermediate, there's things that may require a little bit of money and a little bit of people, but like, maybe we're there yet, but we're not quite there yet. But like, I need to have that in mind because that's going to influence the next step that I take. And finally, like, if this is the God only, like, there's no way I could ever have that much money. There's no way I could ever have that much people. We're talking about resources here to accomplish the vision. There's no way. Well, but there still needs to be an ultimate thing that you put your faith and trust in God and proceed towards. If you don't have vision for each of those 3 categories, you will be miserable here. I mean, I'm just telling you, the reason you'll be miserable is because I will make you miserable. It's like, it's just the bottom line. I see the forest and the trees. That's just the way God wired me. I see the details. I see the big picture. And so when you have all this vision up here but nothing down here, I'm going to drive you crazy. Where is this at? And when you're all about right here and never about up here, I'm going to be like, what is going on? This is it? I will push on you, okay? So this will be like a miserable place if you don't continue to keep growing in where God's called you. And the truth is, I believe God's raised up many of us that, like, your vision far exceeds in the immediate, intermediate, and ultimate for the area that God's called you to beyond me, Marcia, or anybody else. Like, God's called you to this place. Go for it. You should set the pace for vision in that area. And then our effort is just to come alongside of you and in support and resource. So vision for all 3 areas. Ask the Lord to give it to you. Spend some time writing down. It's a simple exercise. What can I do right now? What could I do in about a week to a month? And what could I do like next year? Have that kind of plan in front of you.
That's great. Probably the most important one is a personal one, and it's godly character. It matters, and it matters all the time. Nobody, not one of us, is immune from this. The minute you think you are safe, you are no longer safe. I said it earlier, but just because God blesses your ministry does not mean He is pleased with your life. And time spent with God and His Word is what's going to birth and sustain your character. You and I need to make the next right decision, choosing the next right response. This is how character compounds. The next right thing, the next right thing. Both my parents are alcoholics. They've been sober for 27-ish years or something. And if you ask them, they will preach it time and time again. Like today, I just got to get through today, and I have to do the next right thing. The next right thing. I have to make the next right decision. If they think beyond that, it's too much. And that's the same with our relationship with the Lord. Assume the best in somebody else. Overlook offense. Prefer others. Guard your tongue. Go the extra mile. Admit your faults. Acknowledge your intentions. Be you and nobody else. This is, in my opinion, these are like some super practical, this is what it means to follow Jesus. But we cannot be church leaders who do not follow Jesus. So if this is a career for you because it seems exciting, you're in the wrong place. If you and I can't live by this, we have no seat, in my opinion, leading a church, a congregation, a campus, a ministry, or a department. This is foundational. Godly character.
And I don't think we can, if we talk about the lifestyle of the leader and we talk about the standard for leadership here in this organization, on this team, it's going to look different than other places. And we acknowledge that. And we're still, I think, figuring a lot of that out. There's still some conversations out there that we're having that it would be premature for me to just like jump in. But can I just say that different teams, different churches, different whatever, have a different approach or caution about certain subjects. For example, this team may have a greater caution about the kinds of entertainment that we expose ourselves to than another team. Some other church out there, Game of Thrones, maybe 2 thumbs up. Just watch it, no big deal. In an organization like that, ours, it may not be. We may have a different approach or a caution with the subject of alcohol or marijuana or different things like that. And again, those are now, of course, marijuana is now legal, so it's a very different world than once when it was not. But the honest truth is the gray area is the subject of alcohol. But like maybe this team chooses to be cautious differently than another church down the street, and that's okay. We've got to figure that out together, and on some level we have to all kind of know what that means. And I think we're in process on some of those things and kind of figured some things out. But can I just tell you, the best way to approach this is with a desire for integrity. Go talk to your leader about something, an area, when you have a question mark about it. Hey, should I do this? What do you think about this? That kind of thing. Let's just in the meantime, let it be organic and let it be from a heart just to please God and to honor one another, to live above reproach. But without going through all the different details of just a lifestyle, let's just know that it matters all the time and we care about it. So we're halfway through, and I want to give you a 3-minute break to use the bathroom, grab a drink, do what you need, and then we're going to finish. But we said today would be an hour and a half long leadership chapel. All right, little break. All right, 30 seconds. All right, have a seat, everybody. All right. The next one is humble, hungry, smart, the DNA of an ideal team player. I actually think all of you are ideal team players. But I do think there's usually one or two that we are weaker at of the three. And oftentimes, regardless of how much a superstar you are in one of the categories, there can be difficulty that presents itself in that area of weakness. And the truth is, it's not just about how you rate in these three words. It's also, what also is a part of it is what you are trying to do or accomplish. So if the stakes get raised, if the heat gets turned up, I don't know if that makes sense. When the degree of difficulty increases, you could have been great for this task that was at this level, for this role that was at this level, for this ministry that was at this level. But all of a sudden, when that goes up, when busyness goes up, when these factors go up, your humble, hungry, smart quotient can kind of get exposed in a different degree in that season. And I think that's where we got to constantly be going back to the drawing board of it. Humble is not just, what you might think typically humble is. It also includes things like secure. Like, I think this is the single biggest thing that many of you need to work on in our organization is be more secure. God's called you here. You're liked and you're loved. Relax. Even though we are constantly trying to improve things, don't take it so personal. Don't let it hit you at your core. We wrestle with the issue, not with each other. Let's get better at the issue. All these things can affect just our security, if that makes sense. I think this is an area. Humble is not just pride and self and all these things, but it's also just being a secure person. Hungry, this is being driven, having a pattern for improvement, for growth. There's personal growth. And that's all hungry, a drive to accomplish, to achieve goals, to find results. And then lastly, smart is people smarts. Are you tactful? Are you a team player? Do you prefer or defer to other people? These are things that Patrick Lencioni in his book, The Ideal Team Player, he talks about. 3 areas, hungry, humble, smart. We need people on this team that are humble, hungry, and smart, and continuing to grow strong in those areas. Growth is a real key. I want to say this, and I know there's different people at different seasons of life, and this will hit you in different ways, but I want to tell you that ultimately, when I look at people to hire, when I'm thinking about people that I want to hire, this is what I look at when I'm interviewing them and when I'm looking at their resume. The first thing that I look at, and the most important thing, is their ministry training. And it's not just what they've done, but it's who they've done it with, who they've done it for. This is all a part of ministry training. So you that are interns, this especially applies to you at your season. That is the biggest thing that I look at when I look at a resume. I want to know who they worked with, what they did, what their experience is in that area. Were they faithful? And not just were they faithful, who were they faithful to? Because that person, I'm calling them and I'm going to ask them. So for you that are interns, I want every experience, but like when it comes time, I want to be your best reference for whatever God has for you next. I want a campus pastor to be your best, because it's who not just who you know, but it's who you've proven yourself faithful to. That's a better way to say it. And so that's the top thing that makes you hireable is ministry training and who you've been faithful. And again, this is not on the God side of things, whatever, and not the character and calling and all that. But underneath that, I would say education. Another word for this is degree. Degree is really important. Some of us have degrees, some of us do not. Some of us have multiple degrees. I do not. I got a year into my master's degree and then got married. My wife told me I had to quit and never gone back. And it's I was a third of the way done, and now I've lost it all.
To be really clear, what I said was when you can be an excellent husband, pastor, and student, you can go back to school. But we need you to pastor because we need a job. And, well, we're married, so you don't get to not do that part. And he got really good a long time ago, but at that point, we just never went back to it. It's just been like, oh, yeah, we really should go back to finish your education. So he's great. He's got my thumbs up of approval to go back many years ago.
But for the
Just
last
to be
year and a half,
clear.
I've really been looking at it more focused to get that done, to get a master's degree. We value education, but a big reason we value education is because it takes typically 4 years to get it done, and it goes back to being faithful.
And none of us would go to the doctors, none of us, and say, did God tell you to be a doctor? Do you pray about it a lot? Well then, praise the Lord, you're my doctor. Yet somehow, we have the thought, I can preach the gospel as a profession. Okay, I'm not just talking about being a Christ follower and sharing the gospel as a witness to my world. And think to ourselves, I don't have to get educated. God's called me, and that qualifies me. Well, that's true to an extent. Paul spent a long time alone preparing with Barnabas. It's not, so I won't go on a tangent.
Well, not with
What
Barnabas alone, but they say that Paul, this is back to my Bible college days, because I know this because I went to Bible college, and I did 4 years. But they say Paul spent 14 years in the desert in a monastic lifestyle before he began his ministry. So there's 14 years between when he had his Damascus Road and Ananias experience, and then when you see him going into ministry. 14 years. So if you want to spend 14 years in a monastic lifestyle in the desert, studying the gospel and that kind of thing, and then you can write 13 epistles, right? And, you're canonized and all that stuff. But my point is this, like oftentimes I think we assume that we can just jump out there and do it. And there's a degree of truth to that, but like there's the parallel of...
Yeah, just do the work. What harm will it do? What harm will it do to go get an education? At the end of the day, are you going to be like, man, I got a college degree. I'm worse off for it. Like, no, none of us say that. And so I just want to encourage you. Like, education comes in many ways. An internship is a part of an education. It's a piece of it. But don't fast track yourself. You can't microwave a steak and it be good. Like, some things take some time. And so listen, if you want mac and cheese microwavable, that is fine. And that is what you do. But my Bible professor told me, you are the gift that God is preparing for the world that he has created. Be the best gift you can be to the world that God is sending you to. I'll stop.
So ministry training, and that's not just about what you do, but who you do it with. Education, credentialing. Okay? Sometimes I'm a presbyter, and so I meet with people all the time that think if I just get my credential, then I'll be ready to do ministry, I'll be hireable and that kind of thing. It's important. I can't tell you that it's not important. I believe it's important. I believe advancing credentials is important. But again, part of that is there's education, there's interviewing, there's all these things that are processed that are a part of that I think are healthy. It's not just about the paper document that you get at the end of it. It's the process that it takes. But it's that order. So all of you are at different seasons on this, but just remember, what keeps you hireable and makes you hireable to people like us and to people outside of us is your ministry training, your education, and your credential.
And just because your credential does not mean that you're hireable. There are lots of people we credential that we walk
think
out
they're
and we
called,
say,
they're called of God, and we love them.
absolutely. But I wouldn't hire them. Like, there are a lot of great Christian guys I'm not letting my daughter date. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not the way it's going to work. And I'll reverse that. There are a lot of great Christian girls I'm not letting my sons date. And so, like, there is a piece of just becoming the best to you. This is about you becoming the best to you. Okay, next one, family. We are a team that values family and working hard. And I love that we can do both. We should not choose. I should love Jesus and I should love my family. And those of us who are raising children, I am on borrowed time. My kids come second to my marriage. At the end of my life, I am not responsible for my children. They are grown adults who will make their own decision, but I am absolutely responsible for this right here. And so, be a team member who values both. This attitude, we talk about this a lot, so I won't spend a long time, but we get to do ministry as a family. Man, I feel like for those of us who are parents, we're raising our children in a greenhouse. They should love Jesus and love the church more. Let's get through that culture that it's a yesterday culture. So I don't think it's us, but the culture of I have to protect my kids from the church, absolutely not. I don't think that's the heart of God. God loves we are his bride, and this is his great idea. Let's not protect our kids from it. Let's expose our kids to it and help them fall in love with the church. Don't delegate. For those of you who are married or who have children, or one day will be, don't delegate what is unique to you for something that anybody else could do. I am Kyle's only wife and the only wife he will ever have, let it be said, if I die. No, just joking. He
Amen.
can marry somebody else. But like, anybody can fill my role here. That's the truth of it. Nobody else can fill my role here. Anybody else can preach on a Sunday morning or do whatever else. Nobody else gets to be mother to those 3 little babies God gave me, who are not so little anymore. And so just know that as we talk, and I know we run hard here, and I know we work hard here, it should never be at the expense of family. We value both.
Yeah, and maybe you could talk about Sabbath just right in line with that.
Yeah. Y'all, we need to rest. So being a healthy family means being a healthy person. I think Sabbath is biblical. And so if God himself took a day off after creating everything, and a piece of the process was rest, we need to rest. We often see Jesus resting. He honored the Sabbath. So you and I, we have strategically, now I know not everybody here is full-time. So those of us who are lead team members who do this as a volunteer, it looks different. Those of us who are staff members who this is our full-time job, it looks different. But let me just say, as pastors of this church, the way that we have tried to set this up as to make it possible for people to Sabbath is Mondays, no ministry happens. We honor Monday. So, we're not Seventh-day Adventists. We don't think it has to happen on the Saturday. I think it's the heart of the Sabbath. It was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So here we go. Make sure that you're honoring the Sabbath, resting, putting work aside. In the same way that we say, God, I give you 10% of my, I bring back to you the tithe that belongs to you. And more happens with 90% than 100. The same principle with Sabbath. God, I give you back this day. And I can get more healthy work done in 6 days than if I try to jam in another 7. Okay.
You were talking about kids, to go back to that. And I was thinking about this morning. I told my kids as I was having breakfast with them before coming, I said, hey, so no TV or video games or device games or
Don't
whatever.
Sit in front of a screen all day.
Until lunchtime, until 12. And they were like, what? It's like, so, play with each other, play a game, read. I mean, I'm not looking for them to spend all day staring at a screen. And it's funny because we go through seasons. It used to be, hey, guys, you want to go up to the church? And they'd be like, yes, let's go to the church. And then there are seasons which say, hey, you want to go to the church? And they're like, well, I think I just want to stay around here and rest. And I can read between the lines, like where it's like, AKA, I want to just sit around and watch TV or play video games. And it's funny because about 15 minutes after I told my kids that, Riley walked into our room and she's like, can I come with you guys to the church? And I just laughed to myself because it's not often that like she or they volunteer to come when we give them the opportunity to just stay home and hang and watch TV all day. And I just think part of helping our kids love the right things, the church being one of them, is remembering that if we just create a world where everything goes, there's no structure or discipline, the other days of the week, then yeah, it's real easy for them basically to be like, no, I don't want to go up and work with Jordan and Mason and whoever else. It used to be Jordan, now it's Mason, around the facility, or to help Pastor Randall and kids. But man, the second I take away a digital device, boy, do they love going and working with Mason and Pastor Randall. And it's just funny. And so I just, maybe it's just a word to me as a parent, but if we just continue to create some balance in those areas, I believe that our kids will love the right things and appreciate the things that maybe aren't value added, like Netflix, but they are just the joys that God's given us access to in our life. No gossip. We pass negatives up and positives all around. This is an interesting one. We've talked about this a lot in different circles on our team because we have also a culture at One Church where we're authentic, we're real. One of the biggest feedbacks I get from people who come in and observe our staff meetings, in particular our directional leadership team meetings, or our campus pastors meeting, is they come out and they're like, I've never seen a team act like this, where you kind of say all the things you think out on the table. I'm just used to a team keeping all their opinions to themselves, and it's like they're sweeping things under a rug, and when somebody's not happy about something, they don't worry about it. And we're they say, you're on the opposite, and we're like, you say stuff, and I'm like, did he just say that to her? Or did she just say that to Pastor Kyle? Because it's always a girl that gets out of line. And it's just really not true. Not true. I'm right here. I think that it's real easy for us to, I think, lean to one extreme or the other, and we're just always after the balance. We want to get everything out there, and in a second we'll talk about the honesty policy. But we want to be honest. We want to be truthful. We don't want to sweep things under the rug. We don't want to have hallway conversations. We can just have an everybody conversation. But we want to do it also very tactfully when we do it. And we want to keep that strength. But we also want to be healthy, too, because I think the opposite side of that is it just gets mean and contentious and conflict.
We can still out-honor each other.
Yeah.
As we wrestle with an issue.
We're really trying to figure that out ongoing in a healthy way. But the worst thing above all that, right or wrong and somewhere in the middle, the worst thing is giving into patterns of gossip, or we're talking offline about people that aren't present. When that happens, it really should be positives. It should be strength-based. This is really what they bring to the table. And when it's appropriate, I'm sure conversation comes up this is not necessarily an area of strength, but this is their area of strength, and we honor the area of strength when we have to acknowledge an area of less than weakness. Does that make sense? The focus, even offline, when something critiqueful or constructive or whatever comes up, it's still honoring the positives in a person, not majoring over those weaknesses. And then most of the time, we want to keep that all positives, no negatives, and say negatives right to the person. Matthew 18 is our example of what that looks like. Or when you've taken the Matthew 18 approach and again, you've gone past the first and the second step of it all, then you go to that person's supervisor who you're having problems with and you bring it up to them, okay? Especially in our model where we have multiple campuses and multiple tiers. I hear it all the time where a lead team or staff member of this campus pastor, rather than going directly to a peer or to a teammate, goes to their campus pastor and says, I'm experiencing this, and tells them, the campus pastor comes to me. Then it's just nonsense, okay? First step is for you to go directly to the person and talk with them and try to work it out, okay? Second step is to go to that person's supervisor. Third step, if need be, bring in whoever is your supervisor and talk about it, okay? That is the way to do it. That's the way to keep things as healthy as possible, okay? All right. We pass negatives up and positives all around overall.
We have a culture of being open-handed. We talk about this a lot. I won't spend a lot of time here. The hand ready to release is the hand ready to receive. We want to be a team that freely shares what we've received to everybody else. We want to maintain a posture of generosity.
I'm just going to touch on the last few for time's sake. QBQ, the question behind the question, taking responsibility is who we are. This whole thing is really just about, what's that? Oh, thanks. Really, it comes from this thought that if you ask what went wrong or what went right, the question behind that question is who was in charge? Who is responsible? And so we want to be an organization that really remembers who is responsible and holds people responsible. That's really important. And that kind of segues into the honesty policy we've been throwing around lately. And that's this and I'm spacing it. I will say the truth in love to the last 15% to the right person at the right time in the right way. I think that's it in a nutshell. I will say that I will speak the truth in love to the last 15% to the right person at the right time and in the right way. And we're continuing to just be that kind of organization, again, that says it doesn't sweep things under the rug. I've said enough on that already.
All right. Shoot sacred cows. We're going to be a church that sticks by principles, not the way we've always done it. So,
number 17, never give up, expect opposition. Another word you can talk about this is believe for the best, prepare for the worst. But we really realize that to accomplish something of value always costs something, takes more time, more energy, more resources than you planned at the beginning. It's just always that way, especially if it's a building campaign, right, Rippin? And so you just expect opposition, but you don't let that sour you either, okay? I'm guilty of this at times where I posture myself like, oh, I'm going to meet resistance with this team member, or the whole team, or whatever. And so I walk into a meeting armed for battle. That's not good. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, we just prepare our hearts and our minds knowing that it's probably going to take people a moment to adjust to what you're presenting. It's probably going to take a journey of sorts. Expect the journey, maybe is a better way to say it than opposition. And don't let it sour you. Don't let it get to a place where you're just always armed for battle. That's very closely related to my temperament too. Work is unto the Lord. This isn't a J-O-B. This is all for Jesus. It's number 18. And then last, number 19, the momentum theorem is focused intensity over time multiplied by God equals momentum. So how are we going to grow this thing? Well, outside of a move of God where he just calls people with his audible voice from the highways and the byways, and they just start showing up, and they start saying, I'm not just here, but here's my wallet. You can have all my time, my talent, my treasure. Here you go. Outside of just a move of God that you can't explain, okay? Setting that aside, how is One Church going to grow? How is your ministry going to grow? How is your campus going to grow? It's going to grow with just this simple statement. Focused intensity. That's doing the right things, making the right steps, the right plans. Focused intensity over time. Some things just take time. Over time, multiplied by the God factor, creates momentum. That's how things are going to go. If we just keep those three areas, we will have momentum.
Yep, good. Okay, two super practical things as we close. As a team, today, 1st of January, first Leadership Chapel of January, this is all about making sure we're all on the same page. Remember, punctuality as a team is important. We're no longer in team culture values. These are just hey, remember these things. Housekeeping. Punctuality is important. We are continuing to work.
I'll say this part because this is a commitment that I need to make to the team. And that's this. I realize that I have created and allowed a culture around here where meetings start late and end late. It is rooted in a care for the person that I'm meeting with in the moment, and not wanting to hurry that. And what ends up happening is with not just a lot to say, but how you want to say that, it always takes longer than you think to care for that moment and care for that person. And it is the single biggest reason why I run meetings longer than I should. I mean, if I was more comfortable just saying it and just trusting that and not having to circle it, we get out a lot sooner. And so my commitment is, while still caring and being concerned, is to try and succeed this year at getting out of meetings on time. And right now we are at 10:30.
Now pretend I'm not Marcia. I'm sitting in another chair of just a team member here. He is still the boss. So at the end of the day, at any organization, when the boss says, we're not finished here and we're going to do this, our attitudes are absolutely, because you're the leader. So I'm here to make sure that, like, we're going to do this as you see fit. So it's wonderful that he recognizes this is something I'm going to work on. I've created this culture. I've created and allowed this culture. Now our job is to not say, this is Kyle's fault. We'd be out if Kyle could X, Y, Z.
Or I don't need to be there on time because we always start late. No, just do your part to get there on time.
Right.
And that will help.
Right.
It will make it all worse. The crazy cycle of this if we all are just late. So it's a commitment I'm making to you. And lastly, if you are late, please do not walk in with Starbucks in your hand. Can I just tell you how insulting that is, okay? I mean, I'm not saying that I don't value Starbucks. I've been actually finding, there's a matcha latte. I've discovered that I kind of like.
With a little bit of vanilla.
Not coffee, but,
Praise
just.
the Lord Jesus.
Anyway, hot chocolate, the caramel apple cider. There's some good things. But anyway, it's just one of those things where, like, I'm not telling you to be fake, but, like, it would do me a big favor. Like, if you're running late and you have Starbucks and it's because you stopped at Starbucks, like, just drop it in the trash can on your way in. Like, just don't let me see it, okay? Just fake me out, all right? But, like, it's just...
Really the hard is don't be late because of Starbucks.
Yeah, and
really
if you have not, or if if there's traffic or the train or whatever, get your Starbucks right here. Not in Ripon, not in Manteca. I'm just saying, there's ways that you can have it all, more than likely, and not be late. If you just, okay, but like when you stop in Manteca to get your Starbucks, then you're not knowing what traffic's going to be like. And so, pick on Anthony. So my point is, like, just know, like do what you've got to do to be in meetings on time, especially this one, and ongoing from this point forward. This meeting now starts officially at 9 a.m. I know in the past we've said it starts at 9:05 or 9:10, and it starts at 9 a.m. That's when this meeting starts for 2020. Now, if we choose to let the social things go for more, that's our choice, okay? But like officially, just for clarity and for helping us all, it starts at 9 a.m. If you'd like coffee, well, we serve coffee here. It's free. Thank you, Don. But if you want to hang out and that kind of thing, and I hope that you do, then try to get here early as much as possible before 9 a.m., and I'll do the same. All right. Last one? Yep. Last thing. Chain of command and chain of communication. I'll start with chain of command. We have one. We have a chain of command. Every healthy organization does. We are trying to get that chain of command more clear. This is not just lead pastors and campus pastors and staff members and lead team and that kind of thing. This also has to do with some secondary things like champions. Champions are a part of the chain of command. They sit in different seats, but they're part of that. In addition to the chain of command, there's the need for a chain of communication. And I want to talk on this. I think champions help us with communication more than the command side, the chain of communication. We need to improve in that area. But specifically, for all of your knowledge, David and Randall, as you've heard, are short-timers around here. August 1st or July 31st is their official, at this point, last day with us. What's that? July 31st, August 1st? I can't remember if it's the end of July or the 1st of August, but it's one day different, so you tell me, whatever you want. Randall, you're the boss. You're the boss. No. Back to the chain of communication. So I just want to be clear that for the next 3 months, Pastor David and Pastor Randall are going to be figuring out how to transition their responsibilities to other people, so that as of April and on, for the last 4 months that they're here, they can focus on projects around here. And so that gives us a season of transition, but As long as they're here, obviously, if they tell you to do something, just do it. I mean, they have my trust, and we love them. But so don't just stop listening to them. But know that that's like the plan.
But know that come
is
August 1st, you can stop
operationally.
listening to them.
Yeah, if Randall calls in October, then let's just laugh about it, okay? Hey guys. But just know that for the first 3 months, they really are trying to transition operational responsibilities so that the last 4 months, we are not dependent on them in those areas. They're just focusing on some projects that help us be healthier. And a big piece of that alongside of them is Sam Vigil, who is officially in our executive pastor role here. Sam will just be focusing on things that affect all of One Church, or that puts Pastor Randall as executive pastor kind of more in the woods of just serving as the Modesto campus executive pastor and supporting us over the time.
So Sam Vigil says something. It is gospel.
Yeah, if Sam says things, she's the future. You better make Sam happy. But specifically, we're working on Sam's portfolio and what that looks like, and so we'll be sharing that in a little bit. But just in general, I wanted to talk about these key parts of the chain of command, if you will, around here. Communication. Henry Cloud, is that his name? He talks about 3 things that a healthy person or leader needs, and that is an attention to things that should be. Basically, they need to attend to things that should be. They need to inhibit or stop or help to bring to an end things that should not be. And then lastly, and the thing that gets the least amount of attention of these is working memory. Leaders need to have the ability to recall what has been discussed, decided upon. A team needs to have the ability to recall. Look, guys, we stink at working memory. All right? There's so much going on. We're talking about so many things that we stink with working memory. One of the biggest things that we've been talking with Sam about is helping us with this aspect of communication, reminding us of the things that we've decided. But this is very, very, very important that we work on remembering. We work on a pattern of how do we circle back to the things that we've decided? How do I circle back to the things that I have on my to-do list to get done? Like just remembering rather than reinventing. We need that. And I don't know why I wrote that other than that. Okay. Regarding lead team and staff, this is all under communication. So lead team, big group, big circle. Inside the lead team circle is staff, okay? And then, of course, inside the staff circle, you have campus pastors or direction leadership team and then lead pastors. You know, does that make sense? The circles get bigger. I'm on the One Church lead team, but I'm also the lead pastor. Does that make sense? So that's how. So when we say lead team, we're talking about everybody.
It's everybody.
We're talking about 100 or so people. If you count their spouses, a little bit more. So that's lead team. When it comes to communication to people in authority, most times communication to campus pastors is the only thing needed, and it's the most important thing, especially if you're a lead team member, okay? There are some events that an additional step of communication, I would say in addition to communicating with your campus pastor, is important. And usually these events are the One Church kind of events. When we're doing something together, when there is a DRI, say the Gallo, or men's or women's retreat. Other examples of these kinds of things are staff retreats, district council for the group of people who goes to that. In those situations, additionally, besides your campus pastor, we want you to remember that there is a need to communicate to other people as well. So what that looks like is men's retreat, and you happen to be musical. Okay, an additional person for you to communicate about your availability or lack of availability at men's or women's retreat would be Pastor Aaron, because he is the champion over that area. So talk to these people if you're musical, if you're technical, if that makes sense. Assume that your help is needed. When Christmas at the Gallo or Christmas Eve rolls around, and I'm just staying on the musical or technical, and you have those abilities. Assume that your help is needed until you're told you don't have to do this year. You can just be a general leader in this specific thing. Just operate under that assumption that there are multiple people for you to be communicating to and that you're accountable to. And we've been using that word a lot as well. Specifically relating to staff things, I want to know. And this is especially, I would say, staff members. Not necessarily lead team members, but like, and again, part of it is you can just discern the name. The staff retreat is for staff, okay?
So to be clear, if you're a staff member in Manteca, we keep picking on Manteca because they haven't quite launched yet, and so there's no history. It's all very pure-hearted. If you're a staff member in Manteca and you are unavailable to come to the staff retreat for some reason, you should absolutely tell Pastors Anthony and Laura, but you should also absolutely tell us.
Because we're planning that event.
Because this is a one church thing. This is not a Manteca campus thing. Does that make sense? So there are dual report of accountability here. If you wonder, do I need to tell so-and-so? It doesn't hurt. Like it could potentially hurt if you don't, but it could never hurt to do it. So just
if you're an Assembly of God pastor, when section or district events roll around, I am your connect. I am your contact. Marcia is your contact. Does that make sense? Do I want you to tell your campus pastor? Absolutely.
Yes, don't bypass your campus pastor.
But just remember that it helps us all to communicate on that front. Lead team is the gray area, and there's just a whole lot of grace there because most of our lead team members are bivocational people with just they're amazing people.
The most wonderful hearts.
That are trying to figure out how to do this, and then balance family and rest and all that. And it's just, they're less in charge of their schedule compared to somebody who's full-time. We understand that. But with lead team, I would just say, just a whole lot of grace and understanding there. But again, we're just trying to be an organization that better communicates as a whole. And what I'm really wanting to say to you that are staff members, I want you to know you're crucial to what we do when it comes to all church things. And I think that we've got to get better. This is me talking to you that are staff members, especially if you're a pastor. We've got to get better at realizing the need to communicate and be present and to be a support for those things. And specifically realizing that there is a multiple report structure in this organization for those kinds of things. Make sense? If you have questions about this, for clarification, just feel free to talk to us. And on the part-time and full-time thing, can we just, Marcia's already said a statement earlier in this. I just said something, and so the heart has already been probably said, but can I just tell you, and this is for you that are here and you that are listening, for those who don't enjoy, you mentioned the Sabbath earlier, and a day off here, or whose schedule is such that when after Easter I send out a message saying, hey team, you guys all did so great, and we want to give this Tuesday off. There's no meetings, just take a day, that kind of thing. Can I just tell you, I realize, my heart to you, I realize how that makes somebody feel that ultimately is here just for this meeting on a Tuesday, and then they go do their real job. And they're like, well, that's great for everybody that can now take a day off. I can't. I have to go to work. I realize how that could make someone feel in that situation. And with great sympathy, I just continue to say, one church doesn't happen without you. You're amazing. Thank you for the role that you fill. I don't want to ever insinuate a lack of sensitivity or care for you. Another example would be like when we say to all lead team members, hey, for a couple events, men's retreat, women's retreat being one of them, or Christmas stuff, hey, it's just an all-hands-on-deck thing. Everybody's there. I'm sorry, it's mandatory. I get that some people are getting out of their job or having to schedule off time from their job for those events. And I don't want that to be a bitter stake in your heart, of all of a sudden, they don't get that, I've got all this, and I haven't been with my family, and all of a sudden there's just this bitterness. So just can we operate from the standpoint, and I'm going to say this every year at this thing, just to try to blanket statement, you're all valued, and we notice your contribution, especially the campus pastors would just echo what I'm saying, because they're in the trenches with you, and they really champion those who are bivocational well. that at least those who aren't at this campus, I'm your campus pastor here at this campus, and I get it. But my point is, we're trying to create an environment in which we can just communicate without worrying about everybody's feelings overly. Does that make sense? So let's just let that kind of be said. You're important, you're valued. We know all the hoops that you jump through. But there will be times in which, for the sake of the organization, we want to do things that only directly impact those who are full-time or those who are part-time, but they're retired and they're they're not working, that kind of thing.
And when we send an HQ thing out that says we're going to close the office Tuesday, don't come in. This is not to devalue somebody who has another job, just to be clear. This is so that we're being good communicators. Sometimes the concern is, I have people on my team that have other jobs and they don't get the day off. And I just want you to know, I don't want to hinder our desire to be a good communicator, trying to protect people's feelings. I just want everybody to know how much we love and appreciate them. And then we'll communicate. And then there's no worry about how people, that they're going to receive it wrong. So finally, last thing and then we will close. Thank you for sticking with us. Basecamp is this wonderful new tool for communication that we have launched this previous year. I'm sure you all are appreciating it as much as I am. And I'm saying it tongue-in-cheek, but I actually absolutely love Basecamp. I feel like it has been the greatest blessing for events, for teams, for communication. It is wonderful. And then I have a way to save pings instead of text messages and all that good stuff. So, two thoughts. One is this. When do you use Basecamp? First time very clear is when it has to do with church ministry. Okay? If I want to say hi to Christina, do you want to go grab coffee? I'm probably not going to ping her. I'm going to text her or call her. I don't, just to be super clear. If I check in on you on a text message and you reply to me on a ping, my assumption is you think it's business. I don't want just a business relationship with everybody, just to be clear, okay? Secondarily, just to be super clear, this doesn't apply to anybody else, but you can always just text Kyle and I on something. Like, I don't want anybody to feel like Pastor Kyle and Marcia don't want me to text them. You have a special privilege. You can text me anytime you want, okay? Secondarily, if you're concerned, let's say it's Sunday and May Day, like service is about to happen, and you need information out to somebody, and you think, I do not think they're going to check their Basecamp. Here's my suggestion. Send it via Basecamp and then send a text to whoever it is and say, I just sent you a ping on Basecamp, or I just commented in the campfire of this group. Please go look at it. It's important for this morning, okay? It will keep all of the communication for ministry on Basecamp, but it will also, there are going to be times that, I want to make sure people see this. And coming to my second thing about Basecamp, we'll get there. And we're concerned they might not in a timely manner.
And
okay?
here we've talked about this, and there was a part of us that felt like urgent communication should not go through Basecamp, because the truth is, when you have all your to-dos and different things, they all come in at once. Like I have 6 due tomorrow to-dos that came this morning all at once, and all of a sudden I went from no icons to 6. Plus, anybody else is praying for this, that kind of thing. And so, my concern is the difference between 6 and 7 icons. Randall just sent me a really important text thing, and I didn't really notice because I had 6, and 6 were to-do oriented, and 1 was urgent. And that's the only difficult thing with Basecamp is I wish there was a way to separate that the things that are project driven from the things that are communication, messaging, but there's not. And so with that said, I'm just uncovering, because many of you have had struggles with Basecamp. One of the things that is problematic is I don't want to unclick my to-do because then it gets lost. But here's the thing that I've discovered, and I hope you have too. If something is due tomorrow and it comes up and it's got an icon, you click it and the icon goes away, it'll remind you tomorrow if you don't forget about it for the rest of the day. And then it'll remind you the next day when it's overdue, and the next day when it's overdue. And it'll just keep coming up. Okay, so like if you're like me and you're like worried about clicking that thing, just click it. Just get rid of those red things. It'll keep it in your mind. Oh, I got to get that done. Okay, and then if you really care, bookmark something. Everybody understands you can bookmark anything. You can bookmark a ping, I believe. You can bookmark all these things so it goes and it's easy to find it. Like you might fear, oh, then it goes way down the list on all the things I've already observed. I'll never find it again. Where was that? Just bookmark something and then just go to your bookmarks and you can just swipe right or whatever, swipe left and unselect the bookmark. It'll go away. Okay.
He doesn't know that's also a dating app, but whatever. He's married and 40.
So I think there's a way to overcome all those things. And lastly, I think Marcia has said it. And again, Sunday I texted David and Aaron. And again, it was an urgent text that I wanted them to see, and I was concerned about Base Camp. And David and I had a conversation. He's like, oh, this is really important stuff. I don't want to lose it in the text thread. I'm going to move it over to Base Camp. So he basically just moved my text into Base Camp, into a thread, and it cycled there. That was very helpful. So when all of a sudden, like, texting becomes ministry, that is an option, just to copy the text and put it in Basecamp. And the benefit of that is, again, it's all in one place. You got record. You can search in Basecamp so much easier than you can search in your text messages. That does not work. I don't know if you found that out, but like I hate searching in text messages. I can search Marcia in text messages, and Marcia's text thread will not come up with me. Hate that. Basecamp works better. Now, Basecamp has its glitches too, which is why I feel like we have this provision that if there is something urgent, just text and say, I sent you something urgent on Basecamp. Make sure you take it, look at it. Is that double communication? Absolutely. It is. If we continue to work to make Basecamp a more healthy thing that we're all using and doing well and consistent with it, will that alleviate the fear of someone feeling like, oh, I got to text them. Let me, give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll see it on Basecamp and get back to me within 30 minutes to an hour. Maybe we just live that. But like for now, let's just live in the two worlds using both apps and kind of figure it out with a whole lot of grace.
And here's how we're going to improve this. Beginning today, Basecamp is everybody's best friend if you're on this team. If you are not on Basecamp all day, something's wrong. And by on Basecamp, I just mean notice when a ping comes in. I will go as far to say, if you are employed here, but within 24 hours, you should be replying to people. Okay? So, if you have received a ping or a campfire, even if it's just a thumbs up or one of these things or whatever all of you do, why you have an African-American thumb, I do not know, but whatever. Anthony always has the black thumb. He's not changed the color of it. So, there's just things, but let's be good communicators. The problem is some of us have this habit. Oh my gosh, there's so many red dots. I'm just going to close it and pretend they all go away. It doesn't work like that. So within 24 hours, a good practice is if you're just on it all day, you can just get back to somebody super quick, okay? So that's real good. Now, if you're a lead team member and you're on Basecamp so very rarely, that you need to have good communication with your campus pastor and your teams or whatever. But just know that, if this is your job, it is your job to be on Basecamp. That's just how we operate, okay? So beautiful, wonderful.
Is there anything as we finish up that anyone for that matter, but especially campus pastors or any of you can just clear up, ask a strategic question that we have not done a good job with? I just want to pause here to just see if there's anything else before we adjourn. Yeah, I would say that's campus. That's both one church and campus specific. So what we've done, always said, is 30 minutes. That's what we've said. If we need to change that, we can. But what we've said is 30 minutes. Sunday mornings has always been an hour or more. And again, if your ministry, like worship team gets here a lot earlier than that, but I think the default is 30 minutes. But then pay attention if it needs to be sooner. And I think a lot of times it is sooner.
There will be times, like, for example, Christmas Eve, that we say, you need to be here at X amount of time.
It was an hour before at least.
Yeah, and it's more than 30 minutes, then ignore the 30-minute thing. Just know that if you're not here 30 minutes early, then you're late. That's probably like the May Day. That's not good. Good question.
Others.
I would like to say, for all of us who have short working memories, this used to be a day-long Monday, and we've just done this in just over an hour and a half. So, big props to all of you who have joined us for this new and revised and yet abbreviated and thorough housekeeping to a new year. That's good.
And
Listen, we celebrate things.
in case it was lost
We are
in
mining
all
for
the
the
direct
win.
communication or whatever, we love you all, think the world of you, and are excited for a new year. It's going to be a great year. Lord, we just take a moment and pray to conclude this, Lord. All these human things that are so important that we've just talked about, Lord, they're there, but at the end of the day, we turn to you. You are the one that makes a difference. You are the one that breaks the chains of bondage. You're the one that grows your church. You're the one, Lord. And so we just take a moment and say, we want to do it for you. We want to do it like you. We want to do it your way, not our way. All of our thoughts and the way we go about things, we submit before you. We want them to honor and please you. And so today we give you our lives. We're ready for you to do what only you can do in 2020. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I'll give you 10 minutes. So 11:05, you can be in your next meetings.